Today on Talking TB, we're going to be discussing gender, intimacy, and TB. Hi, I'm Ashna Ashish. I'm a lawyer, a public health professional, and an MDR TB survivor associated with Survivors Against TB, which is a TB survivor collective working with survivors and advocates and experts to ensure that persons affected by TB get person centered TB care. With me today is Sandhya Krishnan, who's an executive coach, a storytelling trainer, a TB survivor, and an SATB fellow. Sandhya, thank you so much for joining us here today. I want to begin with discussing how TB impacts intimate relationships and what are some of the common challenges from the perspective of TB survivors.
I think, as you said in the introduction, Ashna, the key point is that it is one of those areas that's not discussed at all. So I think the entire darkness around it is probably all pervasive, right? I can speak of my experience and the experience of people who have shared their stories with me, but on multiple levels. The disease itself is one of the big symptoms is fatigue, right? And the disease affects so many parts of us. It's all pervasive, and when your body feels like it is under in malaise, if you feel unwell, it obviously affects every part of us, and there's a very strong mental element to it as well. Some forms of TB have a lot more symptoms. So whether it's the fatigue, whether it's the nausea, whether it's so many other symptoms, and then of course there are the effects of the drugs that we take as well, which have effects on the body, but again on the mind as well. And well, with everything, it's as simple as that when you're in rest and digest, when you feel well, is when you can feel feelings of arousal or feelings of intimacy or feeling of connection. When you feel unwell, it affects this necessarily on so many fronts, right? Adding to that, the feeling of stigma, the worry of spreading disease, and everything just compounds. So it is an area that probably should have been discussed long ago, and it does have impact on so many different levels, which is what I'm sure we'll talk about.
I want to get a little bit specific in terms of the impact. We do know that, of course, it impacts everyone affected by TB. But are there differences in how women and men experience the stigma related to TB and its impact on their relationships specifically? Because you mentioned that there's this sense of, will I pass it on to my partner? And there's that concern, sense of self stigma. There's also societal stigma. So, what are the gender differences that sort of play out there, according to you?
Again, from the experience of the stories that I have heard, there is a certain expectation. Well, I'll say some of it is common to the experience of women with any kind of health condition, which is that it's often discounted on the one hand, but also stigmatized more, right? So whether it's a woman who has to live separately or being considered, not safe to live in the house, in many cases, I have seen that same metric is not applied to the man. So that kind of familial or societal stigma that impacts, which of course then will impact everything else, including intimate relationships. On the other hand, there is the expectation that, okay, now you've got your diagnosis, now you're on medication, it's business as usual, right? Now please get back to life, because we've spent our 2 days dealing with taking you to the doctor, and that was a lot. So and one of the expectations is legitimately that the woman resume intimate relationships, because that is her duty. And again, I mean, this is oversimplifying it. But from again, this is just because this isn't spoken about enough. I can only speak from the anecdotal experiences that and conversations that I have had, right? Where there is a certain level of anguish, because there are times when you don't feel well for months after, if not years after, not to mention that it affects your mind, your self-confidence, all of which, and of course the worries about money, worries about family, kids, and as you mentioned, all of the kind of stigma. Each of these will impact our ability even to be sexually active, or to have feelings of arousal or intimacy. So does everything that is gendered also affect women with TB? Yes, but specifically also that TB in itself compounds each of these in its unique ways.
I want to dive a little bit deeper and sort of explore how TB treatment specifically affects sexual health and emotional intimacy. Could you speak a little bit to that?
I'm not the expert, but again, I will say that the impact of the drugs, you know, it can be quite devastating. To say the least. I mean, some may sound like a dramatic word, but something as simple as how you feel about yourself, first of all, when you get on it, the nausea and the other side effects. You know, your sweat is discolored. Many of our drugs have impact on our brain. They create depression like symptoms, several other mental health concerns, adding to those of the disease itself. On the whole, it doesn't make for a very wholesome lived experience. None of our drugs is side effect free. And also just and sometimes people are taking drugs through the day, right? So the tension of that and the fear of not knowing what to expect the next day, or when we will ever turn around a corner, when the darkness will end, are we even going to make it? All of these will necessarily impact, and the length of the treatment, right? Sometimes some of us were on drugs for a year or more. You're a case in point as well. When you're on drugs for this much, you don't even see light at the end of the tunnel. The last thing that you can think of, which is, again, like I said, there may be expectations around that what more do you need now that you've got the medication, right? But it's a very long journey, and even on the other side of it, many of us were changed as people, right, at the end of our treatment. And once the disease was over, yes, we knew we were disease free, but the impacts that followed as a result of that, the isolation, the loss of job, the loss of identity, these carry on through, and they of course affect our sense of sexual health and well-being as well.
Sandhya, thank you for bringing out how it impacts how we feel about ourselves, right? Both the disease and the treatment. What role do you think self esteem plays? Because this affects your sense of self so deeply. What role do you think self esteem plays in the relationship dynamics of TB affected individuals?
It's huge, and I think, again, this begins with what the dynamic was even before the disease hits, right? Very often in many relationships with women and other genders, the relationship is rarely one of peers or equals to start with. And in so many of these dynamics, there is a sense of one person having a lot less agency than the other partner, which only gets exacerbated with the disease. I'll say it works both ways. So if it in a heterosexual relationship, if it were the man who were dominant to start with, had the disease, if he's feeling better after medication, then he's not disease free. He may not even be in contagious forms of the disease. He may not be contagion free, but he if he wants it, the woman will have to comply. That's some of the dynamics. And the other way around as well, which is that I am now symptom free, but I'm still treated as if I'm contagious. So it's not just how we perceive ourselves. Sometimes it's how everybody else perceives us. It's doubly hard again to maintain that self-esteem. But also, I will say, so much of our self-esteem, we are so permeable to our surroundings and to our community and tribes around us. It will take for the support of a village around us to actually bolster our self-esteem, right? And when we have the exact opposite, it's almost impossible for even the strongest amongst us to maintain that self-esteem. I certainly lost mine during my treatment, and it took a lot of work to build that up again, right? And you're never the same again as a result of that.
Absolutely, and I can imagine how hard that must have been. And while your sense of self and how you feel, with everything that's going on, is definitely a huge factor in our intimate relations being impacted. But I want to speak a little bit also about the role society has to play, and what are some myths around TB and sexual health that you would personally like to see debunked? Because with TB itself, there are so many myths attached. And then when you have TB and sexual health together, that sort of snowballs into its own kind of thing. So,
Absolutely. I think the first is really shining some light on the topic and having more conversations more publicly. over sexual health overall, but really about the person struggling with the disease to have agency. There are so many, we're so quick to jump to assumptions about things that we don't know. And I think it comes down to educating ourselves, but also asking, right? Asking the patient. And so much of what we do at SATB is really saying, ask us and we'll tell you. There's no other substitute for knowing what the lived experience of a particular patient is. And so, I mean, typically it's about what forms of TB are contagious or not. They all revolve around some of the myths around TB themselves. But again, when it comes to the intimacy part of it, it's that how does this correlate to mental health, physical health, sexual health, intimacy, right? Can you be intimate with a partner who's not supported you in household duties, or who's not supported you financially? Can you be intimate with a partner who's shaming you for having the disease? So there are nuances and so many layers to how this can impact us from the people around us. And of course, I mean, can you be intimate with your husband, say, when your mother-in-law has been taunting you all day and your husband doesn't take a stance? I'm just giving you examples of what I've heard, but if we don't have these conversations and speak about the lived experience of what somebody with TB goes through, and especially, genders like women and other genders, I think it will forever stay in this murky area, but and have long-term consequences on families and in society at large.
I want to follow up on that a little bit. So, when it comes to sex drive, one of the most common misconceptions and my personal pet peeve is people automatically assume that if you're a man, you have a higher sex drive. If you're a woman, apparently you don't have one, or just put up with it, or it's your duty. How do you think this plays out in the context of TB, where for all intents and purposes, a woman may want to get back out there once it's safe for her to do so. But all of these sort of burdens and judgments weigh down, that you're not supposed to express your sexuality a certain way, or you're not supposed to admit to having these desires. Can you explore that a little bit?
For sure. As you said, I mean, it's myth busting, right? That women have lower sex drive than men. I think also that why this does a tremendous disservice is to many of the other aspects that you spoke about, right? It's the feeling of isolation. It's the feeling of having to travel this journey entirely by yourself. It's the feeling of lack of connection with the outside world. I mean, I think more than ever, if as soon as it's safe to do, we should be able to express our needs. And I think it comes down to really dispelling the ignorance around some of these ideas. Intimacy can be such a powerful way, intimacy and sex in its various forms can be such a powerful way to reclaim our self-confidence, to just get out of our own heads and not be thinking about disease, home, this, that for a short amount of time. It can deepen bonds that, when you're staring death and disease in the face, it could be a wonderful time to reconnect with the people who are most important to you, one of which is, of course, our intimate partners. And I feel like there's a wonderful opportunity there, really, for us to grow as communities, as families, and indeed with our intimate partners. But that will only happen if we dispel some of these myths and the ignorance and fear also. There is a lot of fear, and the only thing that dispels fear is knowledge and an openness and curiosity.
You spoke about reclaiming, a sense of empowerment through exploring intimacy, and I find that really beautiful. Specifically, when we talk about survivors, how do you think they can regain their sense of intimacy and closeness in relationships after TB treatment?
So I would love to say that it would start with us reclaiming our sense of self, but I know from from my line of work and in behavioral science that it's we cannot sometimes we can love ourselves more when we are loved by the other, and so it comes down first to recognizing that there has been that sense of loss of whether it's identity, self-esteem, sexuality even, and to start again with curiosity, right? We don't need to go from 0 to 100, but we can start with in the way that feels most comfortable to us. If we can self-soothe, we must try that. If we are soothed best by non-sexual intimate touch, then that could be the next first step. If we are soothed instead, or if we can dispel some of our own fear through conversation, let that be the first step. So I will say that it might sound daunting, and for many of us that have like physically changed so much as a result of TB as well. It's not just a you know esoteric identity or a psychological identity. Sometimes our physical identities change so much as well, and we barely recognize ourselves in the mirror. It is scary, but I will say that the first step needn't be. Right, we're just looking into a zone of curiosity and growth, and we might need to look in more than one place to find it. Right, eventually we must learn to love ourselves though, and ask for the love that we deserve.
Absolutely. And speaking of more than one place to find it, what do you think health providers can do to better address sexual health concerns when it comes to persons affected with TB? What kind of resources are out there for somebody, for instance, who wants to resume intimacy while on treatment and explore that option?
I plead the fifth because, or I plead ignorance.
That's
Let me
how
put it
lack
that
of the
way.
information is.
um, I wish that there were resources out there, and if there are, I certainly haven't come across any in all the years that I've been working in this field. I will say that even, I mean, it was not a conversation that I felt comfortable to have with my healthcare provider. And it certainly was a question on my mind. I finally did muster the courage to ask. But again, I felt quite alone in this, and that it was just me asking the questions and me having to figure out, and me. I mean, I felt very much like the onus was on me to make that discovery, and I'm not shy, or and I have the vocabulary, right? I feel it comes down to healthcare providers to be educated in this, and whether it's them or their support staff, that hopefully survivors will have access to counseling. It really comes down to them taking the initiative and asking them how their sexual well-being is. It's one thing asking how they're feeling physically. Now they're starting to ask how people are feeling emotionally, mentally. I think it's very important that we ask how we're feeling on all fronts as well, right? And sexual health it's very much a part of thriving and feeling good and feeling alive in your skin. So it comes down to giving them the vocabulary to ask this with sensitivity, and based on culture norms and other societal sort of within the realms. But I think also the more I have seen, honestly, Ashna, I feel like the human experience is so universal. Sometimes we're a little too scared to ask because we think we might offend, but we're so universally human. I think the possibility of overstepping is much lower, and the joy of being asked a question that is so relevant to us. I'll say that, I'd rather err on the side of taking that chance for a healthcare provider to say, "Are you okay? Is there anything you need? Do you need some information?" Is really the first step.
Absolutely. And one of the barriers that you did identify is that hesitation comes from a cultural context, from societal norms. Could we talk a little bit about what are the cultural attitudes towards TB and sexual health, and how would you like to see these change?
I will have one anecdote from maybe from one each, and that too just in like my vicinity of the people of the various genders that I have worked with. None of us is talking about it, and I'll be honest, sometimes when you're just thinking about where to get medication from, who's going to pick the kids up from school, or getting your health back, losing your job, these are the conversations that even for us working in this space, we tend to overlook and ask. More than anything else, I'll say, Ashna, it rather than classifying people as gender, I mean, as community first or religion first or culture first. I'll say the question is just ask an exploratory question. If we are thinking so much about, oh, I shouldn't because this person is from this community, it's too much of a burden on a healthcare provider or on a counselor. Perhaps just initiating the first question and seeing if the person is open or receptive. What it also does is it opens up the door to that conversation. The person may not initially be comfortable, but again, we're all human. We all have sexual needs. We all have intimacy needs. When the person feels ready, they will find a way to have that conversation if they know that the door is open and that it's a safe space for them to express and ask.
The last question that I want to ask you is more on what advice you'd have for those who are navigating relationships and intimacy while undergoing TB treatment. Is there something you'd like to say to them, perhaps that you would have liked to hear when you were going through your journey?
And maybe also to the partners of the people who are going
Yes,
through that,
absolutely.
because I wish somebody had spoken to partners more as well, right? To people going through the TB journey itself, it's that my hope is always that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that you can sometimes, it's like a jhatka, it's like a shake up that we've all had in our lives, but on the other side of it can be also our greatest thriving, right? If there's a feeling that, oh my God, I will never be the same again, that I will never be the same again could also be so much better and so much more mindful and conscious and healthy than we ever were. And we will prioritize from what we know of human studies. Nothing is more important and more strongly correlated to a sense of well-being and happiness than the quality of our relationships. And of these relationships, if we happen to have an intimate, committed relationship, a partner, the quality of that relationship singularly impacts our happiness and well-being positively or negatively, depending on the quality of it. So if there was ever a time to prioritize that and to reprioritize or to come back to that relationship, let I mean, if these moments of us being forced to slow down and take stock of our lives could be one such. So I will say today I'm so much healthier on so many fronts than I was pre-TB, and it takes just a little bit of consistent effort, but also I will say it's conversation and communication. There is just no substitute for that, right? Unless we talk, unless we explain our fears, unless we are able to describe our feeling of how we feel in our body, in our skin, in our mind, in our head, there will never be connection. Our partners need to understand that there were very dark spaces that we might have gone to, and we need their help to pull us out, but also that we can now be a source of strength, and we can now also show them how we want to be loved and ask them how they can be loved. Sort of like, it's like a renewal moment as well. So I'm full of hope and positivity, and I would like to say that this could be maybe in some ways the best thing that could have happened for taking stock of your life.
Thank you so much, Sandhya.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
While conversations around intimacy can be delicate, we need to have these conversations as people affected by TB, as their partners, or as their health providers. Because as Sandhya mentioned, without conversation, there is no connection. Thank you.